Today, I would like to bring Mr. Andrew Dalton, the Director of Education of the International School at Park City, Malaysia, okay, to give you an insight on this topic itself. A little bit of background of Mr. Andrew Dalton. He is the Director of Education within the Park City Group, which include the International School at Park City, Kuala Lumpur, and its sister schools in Hanoi, International School Park City, Hanoi. He has a wealth of international schools leadership experience, having worked in the world-class school across Asia and in the Middle East. Previously his schools includes the Green Schools in Bali, Indonesia, Bruins Grove International Schools in Thailand, Tanglin Trust Schools in Singapore, and St. Christopher's International Schools in Bahrain. So I would like to invite Mr. Andrew Dalton to the forum.
Thank you for the introduction, David, and good morning, everybody. It's an absolute pleasure to be involved in this wonderful event. I'm sure that I'm not the only one who has enjoyed the morning so far, with the welcome address from Mr. Ng, the opening speech from His Excellency Charles Hay, and the keynote by Ben Schmidt. So it's quite daunting having to follow such a lineup, yet we shall do our best. And we have a team who I'm sure we can inspire all of the audience today. And I'm delighted to be joined in this session by Mr. Azlan Sharom, who is the Director of National Schools of the International Schools Partnership Southeast Asia, and the operator of Tenby Schools and Asia Pacific Schools, Malaysia. And also by Mr. Lim Kar Cheng, who is the Private Education Director of the Methodist Council of Education, Malaysia. In a moment, I shall invite Azlan and Kar Cheng to make a presentation. And after the presentations, we will just have a little bit of time, I expect, for some question and answers. So the first presentation by Azlan is on the topic of raising global citizens, come what may. And this will be immediately followed by Kar Cheng making a presentation on the topic of private education opportunities and challenges in the new norms. So I do hope that you enjoy the presentations.
Assalamu alaikum. May peace be upon you. I'd like to begin by thanking the organizers for the honor and privilege of speaking at this august conference. This pandemic we're living through provides a timely backdrop to discuss the importance of global citizenship and to consider the role that K-12 educators play in preparing the future generation for their part in this. Now well into its second year, the COVID-19 experience has certainly brought the world together in ways unimagined and not seen before. Despite the obvious concerns and anguish it has brought, however, there have also been some silver linings. The scale of ICT deployment in K-12 education, for one, has accelerated out of necessity. And while it cannot fully replace the learning and collaborative experience from face-to-face interactions, where the necessary infrastructure and provision is available, it has made possible wider access and participation to learning under dire circumstances. The notion of global citizenship and international relations is well established. Most would not give it a second thought. The fact that we live in a tightly interwoven global society where coexistence and codependence with others the world over is natural. And yet, or perhaps because of this, it warrants pause and reflection to consider how we develop our understanding and roles of being global citizens. How do we ensure, for example, that the path we continue to chart will help us safeguard the best interests of mankind for continued well-being and prosperity? In the context of this conference, the question, therefore, is how do we best raise global citizens? And as the current pandemic has made necessary, come what may. Traditionally, such discussions would dwell on the transactions involved to achieve this. Today, I'd like to begin by deliberating on the essence of being global citizens, the what and why of it, if you will, before going into the practicalities involved to help this journey along. If there is one thing that COVID-19 should have reminded us all of, it is that we are one and the same as human beings. The virus does not recognize nor discriminate between borders or passports. So before venturing on to consider what it means to be citizens, be it domestic or global, and how we should prepare our youth for their roles as such, it warrants introspection as to who we are fundamentally. As human beings, we are privy to thought, and as described by William Chittick, thought is the human ability to be aware of things and to articulate this awareness in concepts and language. It is also often said that the purpose of education is to help one discover and accept oneself, and in turn to respect others. Therefore, one could say that the best preparation for our children's future is to help them become aware of themselves first and foremost. Look at any thriving organization, and what we will see is a gathering of individuals with a diverse mix of skills and experience, each bringing something unique to the table. Combined, they invariably prove that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, and that these individuals help the organization grow and succeed. Similarly, being a citizen, either of a nation or of the world at large, demands that individuals know themselves well enough to bring their unique contributions together with others for the betterment of the whole. Their view, or porch, if you will, should not be one of deciding who is better than the other, but rather one where there is mutual respect for the virtues that they bring towards the greater good. In order to do this well, much as, say, an engineer or a doctor may know their stuff and speak with authority in their given areas of expertise, a global citizen should equally be acutely aware of what makes them unique by virtue of their own culture and society. Ironically, when one travels or studies abroad, far from just learning about others firsthand, we are often reminded of shortcomings in understanding our own selves and cultures. All it takes is for a native of our host country to ask about our history or why we do things certain ways for us to question our own understanding. This is not a bad thing if we learn from it, as it serves to remind us that we can do better. It also stresses the importance of ensuring that our narrative is true to who we are and not to succumb to too syncretic an approach of arriving at one merely to fit in. Education should never lose sight of that which binds us all as human beings, especially as at times we risk doing so by allowing ourselves to be swept up by an overriding and sole pursuit of knowledge and skills. Consider then that epistemology best acts in the service of ontology, in preserving and advancing us as relational human beings. In the Malaysian context, it is apt that school children are taught the Rukun Negara, but it is most important and meaningful that teachers find ways to guide them to live and imbue those values to the extent that it defines and reinforces who we are as Malaysians. After all, knowing who you are allows you to step forwards with confidence and authority as a productive member of the global society. So, moving on to the practicalities of raising global citizens. The economic world is truly borderless, and a global citizen must be ready to work in that environment. At ISP, we understand the need to prepare our students for 21st century careers, but what do these jobs look like? We already witness much automation through robotics and artificial intelligence, transforming and even removing many established career options. And there will be many roles to come that do not exist today. Commercial drone pilots, home technology integrators, and personal data coaches, to name a few. However, the truth is we can't see into the future and be certain what the jobs will be. And so, along with instilling sound human values, we must prepare students by equipping them with a core set of 21st century skills, like independent learning, critical learning, collaboration, and digital literacy. By embracing these skills and becoming naturally comfortable with the use of technology, we know they will succeed, God willing. Technology in education, or EdTech, is no longer new, but often its application seems to be stuck in time. How should we incorporate technology into learning in schools? Is it best in use when the technology itself fades into the background, not garnering attention as shiny and exciting gadgets, but rather merely facilitating or enhancing the learning? Consider its role in authentic redefinition of learning. Let's take a basic task for a student, such as understanding a world event and writing about their understanding. Moving from paper to technology, you could replace their textbook with an electronic copy and their exercise book with a word processor. This is what we would call substitution. And sure, there are benefits to be had, such as spell checking, cut and paste, and such like. But the task fundamentally remains the same. Imagine then, instead, that we use the technology in the classroom to choose a current event, not one in the textbook, which may well be dated, arrange a video call to an industry expert, have the students ask them questions and collaborate with other students located in their classroom or in any classroom anywhere in the world. Compare and consolidate thoughts with people from different places and cultures, and then write a journalistic article. Post this article for a safe community to see and provide feedback. Now the teacher is developing and accessing all the skills we want to see, not just marking a written essay. This is just one example of a task redefined by the use of technology into a real-world experience where participation will contribute to developing global citizens, comfortable with using technology to perform authentic tasks and are ready to succeed in their future careers. Online learning also encompasses a much broader spectrum. Co-curricular activities must be catered for fully for the students' holistic education to continue uninterrupted. The online environment must also support and cater to teachers, their needs for ongoing professional development, and let's not forget the importance of continued engagement between the school and parents. That is to say that the entire ecosystem must be online capable, not just the classroom. In Malaysia, we've had somewhere in the region of 8 start-stop switches between on-campus and online learning. So being ready and agile to keep amazing learning going, regardless of interruptions, must continue to be a high priority for our schools. And God willing, once we move on from this environment of lockdowns and distance and online learning, we should still retain those EdTech elements born from the pandemic necessity, which have brought productivity advancements. Finally, let's consider how schools can introduce students to the global community early. This would typically have taken place during higher education, but nowadays we've pulled that in. At ISP, our global network of over 45,000 students in 15 countries provides ample international opportunities for the 6,000 plus students in Malaysia to interact with peers around the world. This is done through a formal program that we call the International Learning Opportunities for Students, or ILOS for short, that promotes learning outside of the classroom, gives students valuable learning and cultural experiences, and increases awareness and sense of a wider global learning community amongst ISP schools. While we look forward to returning to physical international travel, we realize that the online environment has also opened up access for many more of our students to participate in programs such as the ISP Model United Nations, our ISP Chess Tournament, Film Festival, Virtual Buddy Exchange, and Math Challenge, to name just but a few. While these examples may be specific to ISP schools, the principle is universal, and judicious application of technology platforms can help any school embark on similar initiatives. In closing, I hope that this sharing has helped convey that education in schools equipped with effective educational technology can and must raise and nurture children to be good human beings and productive members of the global society. Powered by educators with a firm commitment to learning, our schools have proven to be immensely resilient and effective, despite what the world may have thrown at us during this pandemic. The future, therefore, is bright, and we should all look forward to moving onwards and upwards. Thank you, and stay safe.
Quo vadis, where are we going in the private school Odyssey? Good morning, friends. My name is Cheng. I'm from the Methodist Council of Education. It is my privilege this morning to be able to share with you on the private education opportunities and challenges in the new norm. First, I'd like to record my thanks to UBSM for inviting me to share in this Digital Education Odyssey 2.0. I like the word Odyssey because it connotates two important words that I like to share this morning. First is it connotates the word long, and second, the word eventful. So as we consider the ongoing effect of the pandemic of the COVID-19, it is indeed a long and eventful event for most of us. It is an odyssey for us, long and eventful. On the onset though, I like to say that at the end of the journey there is hope. I like to take a standpoint of an optimist and declare that the future is bright. This is because I view that we are in the season of a pandemic. As in all season, things will change in due time. And as in all season, we change or we adapt our way according to the season. However, in this season of pandemic, there are two guidance or attitude with the letter E that I like to just share this morning. First, in the things that we cannot control, we accept the situation variance permutation and we try to learn to better manage it. Second, in the things that we can control, we look at the constancy of what is good, what is reliable, and we strive to do better to expand on it. So we expect the situation variance permutation, and at the same time we expand the constancy, what we can do and what we can do best. I'm sure over the course of two days, much has been said about the impact of COVID-19 on the field of education. I just want to add this personal observation. COVID has indeed thinned the disposable income, and parents are more conscious, not only at entry point about their affordability, but also on the long run about their sustainability in financing their children education. So it is for them indeed an odyssey, a long and eventful one, and they would want to end the journey well. So we have seen, I personally have seen the increase in requests from parents for payment plans, for fee discount, bursary to cover school fee. And this situation variants have indeed permutated before us. Even as we consider this permutation of event, I like to draw us to some constancy in private education that we can depend and improve on. If you look at this chart, over the last 8 years, we can see that private education have indeed increased, but it have grown to probably a stagnation, and if over the last 2 years, we can say that is a decline. But notwithstanding this, there are two fundamental truths that has been holding out all this while. If I can call these two fundamental truths. First is that private school is seen as a platform to add value to the delivery and quality of relevant skill in the school curriculum. And second, private education is perceived by most parents as providers that have offer a holistic curriculum and better facilities. It is based on these two truths, that there is a call for public and private partnership for us to establish this partnership, aiming for an interchange of strength and improving and leveraging on each other's strength to improve in areas such as what we can see: STEM education, usage of technology in the co-K and sport and arts area, building characters and value, and developing English proficiency. So we can say that private education do have a significant role in partnering with public school in improving the overall Malaysian education landscape. In the recent ISC white paper, 10 considerations by parents in choosing private education was outlined. This is what I categorize broadly as the constancy or area of opportunity that we can look at and expand and improve upon it. First, of course, there is this fundamental that of course, private education is a service that you pay. So cost is involved, and how affordable you price your service is very important. The fee point is where a parents can come in and afford education is something that we have to consider about. And as parents feel the pinch of in the cost, they will scrutinize the value that they get for their children. And of course, we see that the teacher to student ratio is important. The better invested class, the diversity in the subject that is offered, and of course the added advantage of the curriculum in terms of dual language and STEM education, and the environment which most parents look for, an environment that is conducive, safe, clean, and one that instills discipline. Of all this constancy, one constancy that stands out for me is the brand and ethos. It is quite interesting that parents do give consideration and private schools are chosen because of the brand and ethos it stands for. Allow me at this point to share about Wesley Methodist School, where I come from. So we have 6 schools across the nation in Penang, Ipoh, KL, Klang, Bandar Seri Cofield and Seremban. What we do stress is the ethos that we bring about to the student. Allow me at this point to share a corporate video where you can see the glimpse of the emphasis that we put on the ethos of our school. Why we place importance on the ethos of the school is that we feel that this is an important area that will resonance with the belief of the parents have for the end journey of their child. Apart from the given academic excellence and diversity in extracurricular achievement and offering, we focus on character building, and this is one important building block of our school. Our core values that we want to instill in our students as they pass the corridors of our school are God-centeredness, respect for life, integrity, and excellence with humility. This is what I call comprehensiveness in the education that we give to the children. And it is important that we want our child to end their journey well in terms of competitiveness. But the constancy that we strive to do better is the comprehensiveness of the student at the end. And it is what I think most parents will resonate well, and they believe that they want a balance of both competitiveness and comprehensiveness in their children education. For the next 2 slides, I'm going to share with you how Methodist Council of Education are moving forward. Let me just broadly share, these are some of the points that we are looking, or constancy that we are looking as we look for opportunity to improve. First is that in the light of the situation of the variance permutation, in the things that we cannot control, we recognize that change are inevitable, but we are looking at how we can improve on the mode of learning, how we can form new partnership, how we can venture more elaborately on the remote and on hybrid learning. In the area of environment, we are looking not just only to invest in the infrastructure and devices, we're also looking to upskill our staff so that they can also upskill and reinvent the way they deliver their service. And of course, this is actually very important also to look into the change of perspective, how the mindset of teacher and how the students are being influenced, and of course the resources that is being put in as students and teachers adopt virtual learning. For us in the Council of Education, or Methodist Council of Education, we want to move forward, and I started with the question, Quo Vadis, where are we going? So this will be our journey guided by these three pillars in terms of leadership and purpose. We want flexibility and effective communication across all our schools. We also are guided by the pillar that we want to improve in our technology and reach. That is, we need to invest in IT and the infrastructure and devices. And not only on this pillar of hardware, we also look at the pillar of people and mindset. We want to upskill our teacher and form new partnership. I'm praying that our Odyssey will have a bright future, and I hope the same for you. So this is my short sharing, and I just thank you for your time and attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Azlan and Cheng, for your thought-inspiring presentations. They have provoked a few questions from me, which I would like to pose to you in just a moment, but I'd like to apologize in advance because we're limited on time. So if you could make your responses as brief as possible, please, that would be greatly appreciated. So I'll alternate the questions, and I'll start with you first, Azlan, if I may. It's regarding the soft skills. How important do you believe soft skills are for the global citizen, and how should they be taught?
Thanks, Andrew. Nice to meet you, and hi, Cheng. It's a given, yeah. And I think what's interesting for me was when I learned that the term soft skills was actually coined in the 60s by the US military, when they realized that other than just getting troops to learn how to operate machines and that sort of thing, that they needed to have the more human sort of skills as well. And this comes back, I think it does tie back to the earlier part of my presentation. Now, firstly, I think soft skills, if we want to call it that, they are nurtured, they're not taught. And they really are the building blocks of us as relational human beings. So it's something which the examples I think that both Cheng and I touched on, when in school, the experience of the child, actually develops these. That's where it happens. That's where it needs to happen. We can't look to add it on later. In fact, I would probably say try changing the paradigm and consider these as human attributes, which we need to instill as a foundation upon which we then build the technical skills. So you can't try to sort of go through school life and then say in higher education suddenly realize you need to patch it on. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah. No, thanks. I totally agree. And this aspect of soft skills was previously overlooked, and I think now we just can't overlook it. It's got to be an integral part of what we all do, children and adults for that matter. So thank you. Cheng, if I may ask you a quick question. How can private education providers stay ahead of the curve amidst increased disruption and the need to embrace paradigm shift in the delivery of education?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think in this current challenging time, what I have shared in my slide is actually to look at the constancy. What I define, again, probably I just want to make a definition. There are things that we know are fundamental and will stay true to the time, tested. And these are the areas that we need to look in, and those could be our core strength that we need to expand. Of course, I think if you look for a single bullet, silver bullet, I don't think so we can have a silver bullet in the current. But I think it will be a variation of what we do best, and versus actually that openness as we look at what can change and how do we adapt. I think some of the word used could be resilience. I think humans are resilient. And as we train our children actually to have that optimistic, so we don't look so much on the negative, but on the positiveness of what could be the outcome, and regardless of the changes and the dynamics of the changes. So I think staying ahead is about that, to look at actually our environment, look at what we can do to move ahead, and then actually just do it like the Nike say, just take what we think should be the step and just move forward. Yeah, if I can just stick to the answer.
Yeah, no, thanks, Cheng. And I would just like to say, if you do find that silver bullet, or if anybody finds the silver bullets, then they're going to be in a big demand of people trying to buy it.
Yeah.
That's right. Thanks. And I'll shift back to you, Azlan. And it sort of links a little bit to the soft skills, I guess. But what are some of the well-being considerations with online learning?
Yeah, I mean, there's been so much of that, yeah, and obviously it's brought a lot of concern, I think, rightly so. Probably three areas that I just sort of remark on. Obviously, I think there's the physical well-being aspects, there's the mental sort of well-being dimension, and also the safeguarding element. Let me start with that last one. Safeguarding in our context, and again, really looking at the children in schools. Again, Cheng, I liked one of his slides where he talks about, the safe environment in schools. Yeah, that has to extend, especially when you're online. And I think schools, well, certainly speaking for our schools, we have established online environments where our children and teachers interact, and the children can interact beyond class time as well. So it's important that they have a safe space to interact. And just one other example is, we may take this for granted, but in our schools, we never publish, students' names in full if it would ever appear anywhere in public. First name, that's it. Yeah, I mean, we don't think about it very much, but that can be an issue, a safety issue as well. So that's one. I think in terms of physical, it's kind of obvious actually. Just laughing at this because a colleague sent an email yesterday. She's arranging a workshop for us on how to deal with eye strain. Everyone's on screens for so long. So that's one. But in terms of teaching, a good mix of synchronous and asynchronous learning helps to get the kids off the screen as well, whilst keeping the learning going. So that's one of the things that we can think about. And in terms of I think mental well-being, we even employ sort of a detox days, where it's taboo. There's no online. There's afternoons, I think, on Wednesdays in some of our schools where it's clear that you do stuff offline. That I think there's all those sort of things, and maybe finally using it again as a tool, as best as we can for social engagement. To play, not just for the kids but for the adults. Because whilst we can't be in physical contact, but again, as human beings, as relational beings, we must have that interaction. I guess those some of the thoughts there.
Oh, thanks, Azlan. You've raised three really good points there, and I think that the outcome of this pandemic, there are going to be lots of positives, because the positives are it's making us think differently, because we have no choice, and those are really good areas. We have time just to squeeze in one more question, and I hope that's okay with the organisers.
Let's do it.
For you, Cheng. And I think this links a little bit with Ben Schmidt's presentation. And I'd like to ask you a question about, I think a lot of people are asking at the moment, in your opinion, will digital learning eventually replace physical classrooms?
Okay, thanks. I think the band sharing is actually quite enlightening, and if you you can take any of those scenario, and it can be actually reality to you where you are. But I like the part where I don't think so digital will truly 100% replace. It's not talking about one replacing another. I think the word probably blended, or I also use back his word reconfiguration. So we actually reconfiguration of the blocks that we have, and we probably come up to a point where it is a hybrid. That part about the scenario 4 where he talked about how things are reconfigured between digital and the real physical is actually the reality at hand. How do we balance what actually works for us? And I think what will take place eventually landed on the ground is our physical own journey, because there won't be one size that fit all. I don't quite believe in that. But the challenge is actually we are in a group learning. I mean, we don't learn on our own. So school is about group learning. So the balance between individual where they actually sort of like fluctuate between the digital and social learning, and versus in the group where you also learn together as a group in the digital and also in person. So those are actually the two dimension, I guess, that when we look at it, where will we end up? So the answer is that hybrid on digital won't replace. It will be somewhat of a reconfigure. But the answer of what it will be actually will be, to me, I think the two dimension, the group dynamics and the individual dynamics. Yeah.
Thanks, Cheng. Again, some great points that my personal views, I completely agree with the points you've just made. I'd like to thank you both for your contribution to this session. You've raised some really thoughtful points, and I'm sure we could have talked on this topic for a few hours rather than being limited to 30 minutes. But there's lots of other people I know who have got great information to share. So I'd like to thank you again, and I'll now hand back to David. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Andrew Dalton, Azlan, Sharom, and Mr. Lim Cheng for this wonderful session.